Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the m-hance virtual summit for October 2021. My name's Adam Carey, and with my colleague Mansoor, I'm going to be presenting to you some new features that are coming through with the latest wave of Business Central. A quick overview as to how the features work. As I say, we've got a little PowerPoint presentation which I'm going to slightly work my way through. The idea behind the agenda today is to sort of go through how the features and updates work their way through and some of the key features that have been released in October. So what Microsoft do now with regards to their accounting software is they have these, they call them release waves. Ordinarily, they have incremental updates throughout the year as you would normally expect from an accounting system, but the two main key ones are in April and October of each year. So we've literally just had the opportunity to see some of these new features coming through. And the nice thing about Business Central in its SaaS, software as a service life, is that you're now no longer going to be in a situation whereby you're on an older version of the accounting system. For some of you that have come across from other accounting systems, m-hance, for instance, have got many customers that use Dynamics GP. What you effectively have with that is, although you're eligible for upgrades whenever they occur, it's not that easy for you to sort of, as an end user or a company, to sort of facilitate those upgrades without the assistance of your reseller or your partner, in our case, m-hance. So Business Central has kind of has moved that all out of the way, and it's turned its, I suppose, the upgrading and the functionality side of things on its head slightly with Business Central. It obviously comes from Navision, Microsoft Navision, which is the older version of the accounting software. But what you'll now get is effectively throughout the year, your admin user. So it's all done with Office 365. So your admin user will start receiving emails. They will have set up a schedule as to when you want these upgrades to happen. And then effectively you'll get a couple of emails dropped through onto your Outlook. So this is just an example of one you'll get through. So if you've got your little tenants, Microsoft will send through this email to you to let you know that an upgrade is going to be happening. So again, there are some settings that you can put into place as an admin user for the Business Central tenant, whereby you can kind of dictate, well, actually, these are the kind of times that I want this to happen. Ordinarily, most of our customers have got it happening on a Friday after midnight. So what it'll do is it'll tell you that it's on its way. There is some possibility to postpone these. However, you can only postpone for a short period of time. So, you know, I don't want it to happen this weekend because it's month end and we're doing a load of work over the weekend, God forbid. But effectively, you can kind of like schedule and get it postponed for a week or so, and then Microsoft will just sort of like bypass the original time when they were going to do it. But they will push it through, and it's not as though you can sort of get away without doing it. Again, the nice thing is going to happen is you don't really know it's happening, other than the fact that Microsoft will kind of then send you an email to let you know that it's been done. Another email will come out to let you know it's been upgraded, and they even put some little links in here to let you know what's happened in these updates. So again, it will let you know the versions you're coming from and to, and then so from that point of view, you're always on the latest version. So it's a nice little bit of functionality, so that you're never going to have this situation whereby you're on an older version, it's no longer supported by something. And all of the bits of software that go with it. So you've got this extension. So if you were involved in the meeting earlier with my colleague Mansoor leading the kind of introduction to Business Central, you'll know that there are sort of a number of extensions that exist that kind of you add on to the software, very much like your phones, your Android phones or your iPhones. You get an update, all of the apps have to work or they can't be on the marketplace. So all of the software developers have got to deal with all of those before they come along, which again might be a little bit of a change from what you've had currently with your older systems, in that when there's an upgrade, you then sort of tend to find out, well, we've tried it with this bit of bespoke software that you've got and it doesn't work, so we need to make some changes to that, or another partner needs to then get involved to make sure that your upgrade will fit with their software. Whereas with this, it's always going to be the latest version, and the apps are always going to work for you. So there are a large number of different releases that have or updates that have come through, of which I've kind of cherry picked some of the decent, better ones that are there. Some of these, again, very much like with the Dynamics GP and some of the other accounting systems, there's some sort of updates that you won't really notice happening. they're little sort of fixes in the background to just improve and tweak. But what you can see here is just a little kind of understanding of some of the changes that have been made. And well, from looking down the list of these, you can see that most of these are very much driven by user interaction with the system. So there's very few in here that you would think, well, Microsoft have just decided that they want to do something. I mean, obviously there's a link to OneDrive and Teams at the bottom, which is clearly something that Microsoft want to bring in and encourage, so that you're using their Power Platform as well. But some of them, such as sort of posting preview enhancements and adding locations for non-entry items, these are little things that you can tell have come from users actually giving feedback to the system. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sort of, as I say, we can scroll through and have a look and see what these are doing. Let me just drag my PowerPoint off of the main screen, and then we'll open up Business Central for me. So I'm going to open up my app and go into Business Central. So hopefully we've got in front of us now the Wave 2 playground of our Cronus Limited. So as I said a minute ago, you notice from some of the sort of the key ones that are here, they look very much like users are sitting there saying, well, actually, it'd be really nice if I could have something that worked in a certain way. And again, that's where Microsoft have also enhanced this kind of availability and the possibility to the end users can sort of start to have an effect in how the system's going to move going forwards. So I'm going to go up to this little question mark which exists in the corner. So any of you that are using Business Central will have this available to you. But this is kind of like the little generic help guide that exists. And if I go to help and support, there's a couple of nice things in here to sort of take into consideration. It does actually tell you or give you links to let you know what's coming soon. So if I was to click on that, it'll now start talking about what's potentially going to be coming in the newer version. But the key thing to take into consideration here is this little link here for giving feedback. So if I open up this, it'll open up another web page for me. So this takes me through to effectively the Microsoft Dynamics 365 portal. And this whole point here is I've got ideas that I want to put through and suggest. So for instance, if I just type in bank rec and it goes searching for them, it'll come up and it'll give me all of these little enhancement requests that have been asked for by various users at the that are actually utilizing the system. It could be that it's an end user that's put this enhancement request in. It might be a partner. I know some of my colleagues have put some of these in. And here again, this just because one of the main new features from today that I'm going to be showing you is to do with the bank reconciliation, you can see where somebody's come in and put in a case as to why there's a better improvement that needs to happen with the system. And then you can get your colleagues and partners, other users that you know in the community to vote for this. And what happens is Microsoft see these, and if lots of people are voting for these, they'll actually kind of either come up with a suggestion and say whether or not they're happy for this to sort of be planned. Some of them are just turned down because it's just not functionality that's going to exist. But in the past, we've said to all of our customers that use Business Central, if you've got an idea for the system and you think it's good, put it on as an enhancement request and then email us at m-hance. Just email me and say, I've added an enhancement request. Can you vote for it? And I'll log in and vote for it. I'll pass it around to all of my colleagues. We'll all log in and vote for it. It pushes these votes up, and then the more votes you get, Microsoft then start looking at it. And this is, I suppose, something that we've not been used to in the past. Historically, especially for Dynamics GP, for the people in the meeting that have used that system, there's often been a case of, why doesn't it do this and why can't it do that? And the partners have been kind of inclined to, well, we'll see if we can write you a bit of bespoke code that'll work for this. Obviously, because Business Central is on the cloud, it's Azure, it's software as a service. They don't want these lots of, this bit of product that's been tailored for each customer. So they've got this little area here where it's a case of, well, if you think it's good enough to go in the system, then it's good enough for everybody, and we'll see about putting it in and getting that done. So it's a really good idea. And as I say, you can see from the ones that we're looking at today that a lot of these clearly come from people saying, well, actually, I kind of, there's things that I would like in the system that can we have those added in? So just working through a couple of them, these are just some of the nice little options that are available to you. And I suppose this is the thing to take into consideration when you are an end user. If I was to open up the Dodo version of Business Central here, so this is kind of like a slightly older version of Business Central. So if I was to go to the finance and I go to, actually, if I just go to the chart accounts. And these are the little things you'll notice as an end user occasionally, which is why when those emails come out to you and sort of let you know that there's been a change, it's often quite a good idea to have a look at this. So this is my chart of accounts. As I say, Mansoor went through a nice little introduction for this earlier, and you can see where you've got your list going down the page and your menu options going across the top of the page. So I'm going to the latest version of Business Central, which is the Wave 2 one, and when I go to the chart of accounts, you'll notice the main body of the window is the same, but at the top of the page, I've now got these different menu options that didn't exist before. You know, I didn't have a little area to let me go off and find what the balance fields are. So this is where the changes happen quite quickly and quite, you know, ergonomically as such, but you can sort of log in and think, oh, something's changed, and they've moved something around or they've added a window. One of the key options that existed in the older version is that if you wanted to send something out of the system to, say, Excel, you went to this little window here to page and you worked your way through to here. In the new system, they've kind of enhanced that. They're looking at ways to improve this. So now you've got this little share icon that now sits at the top of the page. It's not hidden away in a little menu icon. It's now hidden away there where you can share this, and that's where you've got some nice new functionality. So as I say, when those emails come out, it is always good to have a quick look at them, because it's not unusual for our users to sort of log in on the Monday morning and say, I think my Business Central's changed because I was doing something on Friday and now the window option or the menu option isn't there. All the functionalities are the same, but it's just, as I say, the user interface gets refreshed and updated, and because they're happening automatically, in the past we might have come out and said, well, these are all the new features to look out for. We'll still do what we can to sort of like put out little videos to sort of show these and little blogs, but as I say, it's really key to sort of have a look at these when you're looking at that. So working down my list, you'll notice the first thing you've got here is the change to, as I say, the main kind of thing is the chart of accounts. They've made it a lot easier to sort of like go off and find what your account values are. So these two options here for your balances, you can go in and get your accounts by dimension. Again, from talking to or being involved in the meeting earlier, you'll sort of know that obviously you've got your chart of accounts and then you've got your accounting dimensions that you assign analysis to. So if I highlight my income services account and then I go to my balance by dimension, it will then open up a sort of a balance by dimension page where I can go in and I can filter transactions and options so that I can sort of see values that are popping into here. I just put in date range for the year. And again, the nice functionality of the system is I don't need to worry too much about putting in various date ranges. I can show the matrix and it's looking at the account codes that I'm looking at in the past. Historically, you'd have had to have gone in and worked your way around the windows, and that's where you've obviously got these dimensions by analysis fields that are popping up here. So these have been made a lot more available for you so that you can bring them forwards and sort of look at those from the front of the screen. I don't now need to go off to more options and sort of look to find where these other options and fields are. And again, with the count ones, very quickly I can go off and I can have a look and see what ledger entries have been added against those ones here. I've obviously got the ability to just click in that link here, but you can see where they've tried to make this a little bit more user-friendly for you, so you can sort of see that information and how that kind of can pull forwards. What they've also done is they've given you this kind of overview chart of accounts overview page. And again, back to this search option, I think this is one of the best things I've seen in an accounting system for a long time. I no longer worry about going around menu options. I just go up to here and I just search what I want to look at. So I've got my chart of accounts overview, which is a new inquiry window. And again, it just gives me a sort of an enhanced view of what I was looking at, where I can see where the account codes are. These are just little things to sort of just improve the accessibility of some of the options that are available for you. If you've got your reports that you send out to Excel, you've got your shortcuts on the home pages, they all exist and they work just as well. One of the other nice new features that you now have, which is making a big difference to a lot of our users, is to do with budgeting. So historically, when you've got your budget filters in here, I've obviously got my list different options where I can add various fields into my reports. So I've got my budget for 2021 and a forecast. And invariably, there's not many figures in here, so you'll apologize for that. But what you then had to do is run a report and then ask it to sort of look at the trial balance and then by the budget. They've got this little bit of functionality within the accounting system. They're called account schedules, but for any of you that have used kind of a Dynamics GP, these are the equivalent of the FRX rows and columns. So I go to my account schedules, and these were very simplistic kind of like lists that I can use. So I'm going to go here to my income statement, and I'm going to show how a nice little change that's been added in. So when I'm building my columns out, what is they've now added to this as well. But previously, you just kind of, it's that little quirk of reporting, but although I'm sort of laying out columns, it's working its way down the page in rows. But obviously here, I'm setting up little columns to show various figures. So previously, if I wanted to do this, I could have an actual budget in the system, and I could have a forecast in the system. But when I was running a report, I was only able to select that at the report runtime. So what they've done here in the build up for the column layout is they've allowed me to sort of select. I've obviously got my field here, which is budget entries. I've got my general ledger entries and got my net change, but it now lets me select what budgets I want to see. So this is very similar to the kind of management reporter functionality that used to exist. And it's really quite nice because it lets you kind of obviously then have, to an extent, a standard account schedule report, which is showing you your actual or forecast figures, the budget figures, and then working your way forward so that when you run this report, you can sort of see how these all pull together. But I suppose when you're looking at that from a point of view of seeing how that all fits together, when you then run your little report, and if I put in a date range there for 01/01/21, you'll then see where it's now letting me dictate almost what I want to appear in these little areas here. So I know previously we've had a lot of customers that want to do forecasting using a budget. And where this kind of fell apart slightly previously is because it wanted you to select the budget up here. It wanted you to say, oh, what's your budget filter? So you could only really select one budget. So you'd have to run a couple of reports to see what the actual forecast is. But very quickly here, I've got my actuals pulling through, my budget figures pulling through, and there you can see where it's, you know, it's bringing in my forecast figure, because when you were looking at this a moment ago, I've told it, well, actually for May, I want to see that bit of functionality. So again, these are little incremental changes that Business Central and Microsoft have put into place, but you can see where people have kind of, you know, this smacks of somebody saying, well, actually it'd be really nice to be able to select the budget whilst I'm building the report rather than just at the report runtime. So again, nice little bit of functionality, helps, you know, improve the kind of internal budgeting that you've got, so that you don't need to necessarily sort of send the information out of the system and then come up with an elaborate pivot table or Excel spreadsheet that's pulling that through. With regards to the cash management, nice little change that's happened in the bank account reconciliations. So this window, as I say, when anybody that's using the accounting system, they know that this is a reasonably nice bit of functionality, because you've got this option whereby I can have my bank statement lines on one side and I can have my bank ledger entries on the other side. What Microsoft have kind of admitted to in the past is that this window could be improved. It could, you know, they could do something else with this. And one of the things that was slightly annoying in the previous version of it, so hopefully, if you do have Business Central and you're just wanting to wait for those new ones to come through, they'll be coming through quite soon. But what you'll have here is sometimes, I suppose it was a very kind of code writing understanding of how a bank statement works. Whereas, you know, I've got my payments sitting in the account bank ledger. So I've got my 3 payments going into here. And I suppose the program developers were just on the assumption that, well, when you pay that out of the bank, it's going to bank 3 payments, isn't it? And as many of us have encountered in the past, well, sometimes if you do a payment run and you're just making a big payment out, your bank actually batches together these transactions. And what happened in the past was it didn't give you the ability to match multiple items to one line. So I couldn't tick 3 or 4 items in one side and then match it to one item on the other. So that's one of the new features that's been assigned for me to do. So obviously here, I've put in a couple of generic payments that are working. I've then manually entered in a line which is putting those all together. And that one bank entry in the statement is now assigned to multiple bank ledger entries in my cash book in the ERP system. So that's a huge improvement, because, as I say, a lot of our customers have got bulk payments going in and out against lots of other ones, and some of them that we've been utilizing in the past have not used, for instance, this bank rec module because of that fact that the statement that's coming in doesn't really give them a true reflection of what their bank statement is, or they're having to break that out over the multiple lines and pull that together. So that's a nice little option that's been made available for you. One of the other features that's now been pulled through is to do with the posting reports. So obviously you want, when you post the bank reconciliation into the system, you want to sort of have that nice traditional bank statement, sort of a, what's happened, what's been matched, what's unreconciled. It's still called the test report. We still kind of find that a bit funny internally as accountants, in that it's a test of a report. But I can see Microsoft's kind of point of view in that it's not actually the finished posting report. I'm just printing this to screen. Obviously, you can run this to file or printer. But what they've now done is they've improved this report to make it look a little bit more understanding. So previously, it just tallied up with what was on the front screen. And there were sort of times when we were sitting there saying, well, actually, this doesn't always sort of relate back exactly to how we would expect this to be, where you've got, your account statement ending balances and your GL balances. Here it's kind of working its way through quite correctly to say, well, I've got my bank statement ending balance, but these figures aren't then just all relating back to here. It is looking at the GL balances, it's looking at the statement balances, and it's giving you a much tidier, more meaningful bank reconciliation kind of report. There was an option that I can tick, which I always forget to do, so I'll apologize for that. Back in when you're posting that and printing it to screen, you can ask there and ask it to tell you what transactions have been unreconciled. I won't bother running it again, but there is that. Print the outstanding ones, and it will obviously show those for there. So again, that came from a number of people sort of questioning what value that report had because it wasn't giving you all that kind of information. So again, you can see where Microsoft have decided that, when we are taking this product forward, and as I'm sure if you've been on any of the other meetings in the last couple of days with regards to Business Central and Microsoft and where they want to go, this is where they're throwing a lot of their time and energy at the moment. So any improvements that can be made to the system to have more people using it, they'll happily utilize. One of the other options is with the auto matching. Obviously, you've got the match automatically functionality, and that's where you've got the ability to go in here. So what it's now not going to do is it's going to sort of the auto apply rules. You don't actually go in and sort of assign any extra rules to that. It just goes off and it has its kind of Cortana, interface working in the background to work that out. It'll go off, but the idea is that if you've already got statements matched, lines matched in other statements, it will avoid those automatically and work their way through. So that's where the automatic matching going. So again, some nice little bits of functionality that have pulled in, that have really kind of been brought through via somebody else asking a question as to why that can work in a certain way. They've made huge improvements to the edit in Excel functionality. So for anybody that's used the system, obviously you can have third-party migration tools bringing information in, but you have this edit in Excel functionality that lets you pull information through. So they've made some enhancements to that, mainly around the recurring journals. So Business Central's got this bit of functionality where you can have a journal that kind of recurs and works its way through. I've spelt it wrong. It let man spell it wrong, but it wouldn't let me. So if I go to my recurring general journal, this is a nice little journal window. It allows you to put in kind of fixed or variable recurrences. The only downside to it in the past has been that if you had a lot of lines that you wanted to have into here, you had to key them in manually. So what Microsoft have done, I'm just going to collapse this little fact box at the side, is they've allowed you to edit this in Excel. So again, this then opens up the software. It allows you to make changes in an Excel format and publish it back in. So previously that didn't exist for intercompany journals and for recurring general journals. So if you had lots of lines that you needed to do, it was a case of going in and manually doing that. So again, it's a nice improvement. And so it's an extra little export to Excel with some extra fields that are saying, well, what are my recurring methods and how often am I recurring? What's my recurring frequency? So again, little incremental changes that are kind of really useful. That's a good bit of functionality that I know lots of our users use, because it is just that dumping it out into Excel and then making changes in a in an environment that most of us as accountants are really happy with. You're not then keying a lot of information into the front end. You'll have noticed when I was looking through the the options to go through. So if I just go off and find my child accounts again, so I've got a little window here. It's giving me my little inquiry window. And again, there's a little extra option that you now have in here, which is now obviously bringing in the rest of the Power Platform functionality. You might see at the top of my page that I've got emails open, I've got OneDrive open, and I've got Teams open. So what they've done now is they've kind of added a direct link to your Teams. If I then go to a certain area within Business Central, I've just gone to my chart of accounts to show me that one there. I'll share it to Teams. It'll then open up and it'll then ask me what team I want to share it to. So again, I've got my general Dodo events. This is looking at our internal Teams page. What it's now going to do, it's now going to share something to Microsoft Teams. It's done that. I'm happy with that. I'm now going to go to Teams. And here you can see I practiced one a little bit earlier. That's the one I've just done here. There's an automatic link directly into Teams. So if there's anything interesting that you want to sort of share out across the environment to your different teams or chats, I can then obviously have that. I've got a direct link which takes us into that page. If I was to click on that, it'll then open up that page independently of my system here. It takes me straight to that window here. So it's a nice bit of functionality to share information out into the system. Whilst I was looking at Teams, there's also some really nice functionality with regards to the OneDrive. So Microsoft are obviously keen for you to use the OneDrive in their system. I'm going to now move to one of my transactions. I've got a purchasing invoice. So these are the kind of more usual locations that you're going to start to put an attachment of something. So I'm just going to find one that I put in the other day where I actually put an attachment to somewhere. That's not there. We'll add another one in. I'm going to go to my purchase invoice. So this is just some standard functionality that already exists. I can put attachments into here. So I go to my attachment page. I'm taking the shortcut. I can go into the invoice and the other area. I just go straight to this little window here. So you'll notice here that I've got an open in OneDrive, and when I'm selecting a file, let me just find that purchase order. I'm pulling that one in, and then I've got this ability to send this and save it to a folder in my OneDrive. So again, it's copying information that exists in Business Central to your OneDrive. So it's giving you that ability to store this information centrally. If I then go to my OneDrive, I've got a nice little folder for Business Central, and I've got now a central location where I can be saving these attachments. So that, as I say, so that people can get access to them. Because obviously the attachments that exist within Business Central are in the server. So again, I've got my, it's pulled the information from wherever I've uploaded it from, it's saving it in Azure on the server. And so if I wanted to then view that from Business Central, from a front end point of view from Business Central, I've got to go to where the document's attached in Business Central and open it from here. Whereas now I've got the ability to send it straight to my OneDrive, and I've got now a shared folder. If I just bounce back a little bit here, when I first sent this across, it realized which company I was in, and it's created a folder for me and then added that one in. Let's just get rid of that little pop-up here. So you can see again where, although Microsoft have been saying for a long time, this is part of our Power Platform. It's got to have links to Outlook. It's going to have links to Power BI. It's now kind of extending those links to Teams and to OneDrive. Because obviously all of our data is now becoming a bit more centralized. Us as consultants, and I'm sure yourselves are working from your offices, lots of stuff on the local drive, maybe on your desktop that's not saved into the OneDrive. It's all pulling that information for GDPR references. And also Teams, if there's one thing that we've all kind of come to heavily rely on in the last year and a half while we've been sort of stuck in our houses and out of our offices and collaborating with people, is that people are now collaborating a lot more with Teams. It's probably one of the, COVID was probably a great thing to happen for Teams because it just let people realize the power of it from that kind of warped point of view. But, the fact that I've now got a very quick way of sending that information through will allow me to sort of further enhance that connection. And again, I could do that from other windows if I wanted to, wherever I've got the ability to share something. So if I really wanted to, I could sort of share a list of, outstanding customers or supplier accounts to somebody. I've got that sort of functionality. I could sort of send that to Mansoor and say, can you have a look at this list as an example? So you've got that kind of real good functionality that exists for you. Some of the other options that have kind of been relatively useful, they've kind of made improvements to the errors that exist within the system. So this is always a key bugbear of Business Central. So obviously, for anybody that's been involved in an implementation or anybody that uses it, it relies heavily on the fact that it wants everything to be set up and ticking over quite happily. So obviously earlier, Mansoor was showing you the ability to sort of like add default dimensions to a code so that it prompts you to do something. And it could be that you've got posting groups that are set up to sort of set default accounts for discounts or write-offs and so on and so forth. And what Business Central has always done in the past is it's very happy to let you know when there's an error. So I'm just going to open up one of these transactions that I was playing with earlier. So one of the key things that always exists for anybody that's used the system, again, let me get rid of this little fact box. So I've got a couple of errors that I've left into here. So I've got a purchase invoice with no invoice number coming from the customer. And what I've done here is I've got a general ledger account code that requires me to have a default dimension for department. So historically, it's not kind of letting me know that I've got errors here. These always appear when you either go to post it and try and post it and it tells you an error, or if you check the distributions with the preview posting. And what this always does is it brings up little errors for you. So historically, the errors have been something along the lines of, if I just expand that open, that. You've got an error message. They're not always that helpful because sometimes they just point to sort of references. They have got a little bit better. So here it's telling me that I've got here. But what they've done to enhance the error messages that you've got is they're trying to now help you sort of work out where you've gone wrong. So, you know, it's telling you what fields to go looking for rather than just assuming that you can work out which area of the system that you have. So here it's telling me that I've not got a document number and to check a field so that I can go in and look at that and fix that. There's also some kind of support URLs that it's now giving you for when you've got these general errors, and that will take you to a Microsoft sort of help page to sort of try and point you in the right direction. But with the two errors that I've got, obviously I've not got a document number and I've got a default value for a dimension code. So that might be that, you know, I don't quite know that there needs to be a default code for this. So what it's got is this little link over here where I can ask it to go and look for the default dimensions, and that's where it's telling me, well, actually, for GL account code 30200, the department is mandatory. That's the reason why you're getting an error message. So it's giving you a little bit of help so that you can see where that information is coming from. So these sort of error messages have now got a little bit more user-friendly, because a lot of the time, as I'm sure some of the people that have sort of worked with m-hance, myself and David and Sharon, they kind of had an error message and they're just, and in the end, it's just like, well, what window are you in? What have you done? And you tended to learn that, oh, well, okay, well, it's probably something to do with your account codes because of the area that you're in. Whereas these are now really kind of helping you to sort of find out, actually, well, where have I got wrong with here and where can I go to fix that? So I'll obviously leave that one as broken. If I was to fix that one with an invoice number, then straight away, it'll just give me that error that I've got to do with the dimension code. So again, it's to help you sort of work your way through the system, because there's nothing more frustrating than having a transaction that you really want to post down and you can't because it's taken you sort of 10 or 15 minutes to try and work out what the error is. So again, so they're kind of listening, Microsoft are listening and sort of helping us to see those. Some other functionality that they've now added is to do with the preview posting. I'm just going to go to a transaction that I know will post. So obviously the idea behind this was that you could go into here and you can see where everything's kind of being updated. So there's this new bit of functionality to do with the general ledger. You've still got your window that's stretched out to show you the VAT entries and the general ledger entries. So I can still go in and look at the VAT entries and see what's being posted, but you can see it's a bit more detailed. This posting preview is a bit more detailed now. So instead it used to tell you that I had one VAT entry and I'd have to click into a link to see what that is. What it's now done is it's giving me all of these posting previews on the front page, and it's making them, you know, previously it was the related entries window. So you'd see that you had things, you know, 3 items that were going to be coded at the vendor ledger entry in the GL. What it's done is it's expanded that out. So from the point of looking at this, I've got my account codes that are being posted to here. If I show that in a hierarchical point of view, you can see where it's sort of letting you know all the account codes that have got postings that go into them. So it's kind of opening up my chart of accounts for me, and it's giving me a little understanding of where everything's going to go. So instead of just saying, oh, you've got some entries going against inventory, purchases, VAT, it's now giving you the ability to say, well, actually, this is how it's going to affect your accounts. that's giving you a proper kind of list of everything that it's going to be updating. So little tweaks that you've made. If I was to turn that off, I can come back out of here and go to my general ledger setup window. Again, this is a system setting. I can go in and I can switch that off and say, well, actually the posting preview, I just want to be the standard version. Again, it's going to save that as I go. It's going to quickly come back to here. And if I now, it might want me to come out of the invoice and go back in, which is sort of standard fare for Microsoft. Let's just go back into that window. It's a nice improvement on the original preview posting, which was just, well, this is what's going to happen. And if you want to know what's going to happen, then you need to go into the window to find out what it is. And it kind of gives you kind of like a bit of a static field. So a nice little improvement that you've had from there. Working our way towards the end of the kind of, I suppose, the key enhancements. They've made changes to the adjustments of exchange rates. So this is where you're going into the system and you're working its way through to say, well, actually, I need to update all of my currencies. So therefore, I want to go in and run my adjustment of the exchange rates. What they've added now is they've kind of added these 3 options in here for customers, suppliers, and bank accounts. So previously, it kind of wanted to do everything. It kind of didn't let you sort of disclude one of them. So this new feature here, which again smacks of somebody saying, well, actually, it's great that I can go in and I can do these adjustments, but I don't want to always, I don't want to update the bank accounts, or I don't want to update the suppliers at the same time. I want to be able to go in and run a process for a particular area of Business Central. So this is giving me the ability to then go in and actually say, well, what am I? Previously it was just a case of going in and saying, well, I'm updating all of my subledgers, whereas now I've got that little extra bit of functionality that lets me go in and dictate which ones I'm looking at. So it's giving me more control over what I'm actually changing within the system. And I think the final little one that I'll just quickly show, items. So the system's got a nice inventory module, and you've got your inventory items, and you've got your service items, and you've got non-inventory items. And what it now lets you do, it's just one of those little things that didn't exist in the past. I apologize for all these little pop-ups that keep appearing. But so when I was creating my inventory items, why would it not let me show more? You obviously had the ability to sort of show your warehousing side of things, so where these kind of, where the planning and the items and everything come from. So I can put in locations as to where my items are replenished from, or where they're bought and sold to. Sadly, when you kind of created a non-inventory item, it took away that ability so that you couldn't kind of track locations of things. So what they've now done is they've given you the ability to add locations in your items. So you can have a non-inventory item now, and you can set locations for it. So you can, for instance, track locational things for non-inventory items. So again, that's just a nice little feature that now exists when you're creating a new item, that you can sort of have the locations sort of working their way through and set down where they live. Incremental changes, as I say, that sort of will happen. These are the kind of things that Microsoft are sort of pulling through. They're working on expanding what functionality you have got, but these are just the kind of key highlightable ones that you've got there. Again, what will happen when you click on those little links, if I just open up a little page that I've got and drag that in, you get these kind of lists of the little enhancements that you've got that will come through. So enhancements in the Outlook add-ins that are coming through, when they're planned to be previewed, when they're planned to be this. These are the kind of, when you click on that little link from the help file, this is the kind of page that will sort of, it'll take you through. It also brings through the different country regions that are sort of are being brought through and expanded on. Obviously at the moment, Business Central kind of is in the cloud is limited slightly to its location, but you can see here where it's kind of continually expanding, continually moving forwards, and when they're going to be putting those information through. Oh, that's a little Outlook thing that's popped up there. So let me just bring back my PowerPoint. That sort of finishes my main presentation. I hope that's been of some use, and some there's been a couple of things that have been on there. I'm open to questions now.
Not seeing any questions in the chat at the moment, Adam. put it out to everybody again. Please, if you have any questions, let us know.
Again, if there's any bit of functionality that you kind of would like in the system, if you're a current user from there, I'm sort of looking down the list of who's attending, and I know some of the people there are using the system. If there's something that kind of is a bit of a bugbear for you, by all means, just sort of add one of those enhancement requests in, and then just email us, and we'll send it around to as many people as we can to sort of bump it up that list to help you along with that. Because, as I say, I know for a fact that a couple of those enhancements that have happened in this release are on the back of kind of where we've logged calls with Microsoft to say, well, this doesn't work the way we think it should work, or this could be improved. And is it possible to do that? Especially with the bank reconciliation report, I remember a number of us going to Microsoft and saying, that needs to be able to sort of do the many-to-one matching, because at the minute we've got too many customers that can't use this functionality.
Adam, we've got a question come through from Chris Daunt. Says, thanks, Adam. Links with Teams, folders, or SharePoint? Question mark. You only showed OneDrive. Which is more personal space?
At the moment, there are areas where you can. There's not a direct link to SharePoint at the moment, so they've got that. They've added that area to the OneDrive, so it'll open up to sort of a local OneDrive for you. There is obviously the ability to sort of add links to certain areas of Business Central, but that's one of those things that's not quite there yet. And it's looking at your local who you're logged in as to see which teams you've got made available to you.
Thank you. That's the only question we've got so far. Anyone else out there have a question, or even if it's related to any other area of Business Central, not necessarily just new features? As I say, now's the time. We are here. We can answer any query that you have.
In that case, well, I think we've got a couple of minutes before the session is normally supposed to end. I'll just give a bit of free publicity to one of my colleagues who's going to be doing the purchase and expense management in a short period of time. So that's another one that would be very interesting to go and look at. That again is one of the apps that you, as I say, if you've been involved in in the meeting before with Mansoor, and you've got these extensions, these power apps, this is where you can obviously elevate the functionality.
See the real power of it. To excuse the pun, Adam. See the power of it.
You can see that whilst they're making big strides forward, that they're really listening to sort of their end users to say, well, what do you want this system to do for you, and how can we improve it? Well, okay. Well, thank you for your time, and I appreciate that for many of you, this is your lunch break. So I'll let you go off and grab a quick bite to eat before you turn up at the next one or go back to work.
Thank you, Adam. That was excellent.